She is now one of the youngest CEOs of a foundation. She's the CEO of Dholakia Foundation in India. I'm so excited to welcome the climate queen. Let me please welcome Keziah Gerosano.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for having me here. Obviously, it's a pleasure to be part of this Karak. And, it's my first time trying this Karak.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to try it in a few minutes. Very, very excited. I'm so happy that you're here. Like we met the first time beginning of this year face to face, and then now we're meeting again. And we met before here, and as soon as I met you, even before I met you, I was like, I really, really want you to be on the show, like for a long period of time. And then when you came for a COP, this was just the perfect opportunity. I'm so glad that this happened. So thank you for making the time and for being here.
Thank you so much. And obviously, congratulations. I believe the first time we met each other was through a Zoom call during the pandemic.
Yes, that was the first time. Yes.
And then after that was New York. And, hearing about your story, about your career path, I did not expect you to open, start a podcast, but seeing it grow very fast. When I was talking to you in New York, I knew that right there and then anything you would do would be successful. And this is just the manifestation of that. So congratulations.
You're so cute. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. But this is about you and everything that you've done is just, I keep telling you this, but it comes from the heart. Like seeing you grow, seeing all the achievements that you've gone through, all the cool projects that you've worked on. It's so inspiring to see, extremely inspiring, especially because you're so young. So it really empowers me to be like, oh, if you're doing all of these things, so it empowers me to be like, oh, I should strive more as well. So it's so cool to see. And so I want to talk to you about a couple of things today. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting episode. In the beginning, I want to talk a little bit about your journey. So now you're in India. You've been living there for around 6 months in Gujarat.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, why are you in India? What's happening? What are you doing there? And just a little bit about what's been going on in your life now.
I would say one word to describe everything would be interesting and transformative. Actually, those are 2 words. But as you mentioned earlier, I've been in the climate space for about 6 years now. And I started, working with local communities and then moving on to organizing UN youth conferences, to working with member states, working with the big names such as the British Council. And then I've been doing that for the past 2-3 years. And then last March, after the UN Water Conference, which was our last portfolio, kind of realized that, I felt empty because as a young person in international diplomacy, yes, we are not yet there in terms of youth engagement, but I feel like something needs to be done more. Mm-hmm. And for me to fill that void, I wanted to go back to local communities. Makes sense. Moving to India, serving the foundation, leading the foundation, gave me that perfect opportunity to be with local communities and at the same time doing the work that I do in the international space. So for me, it's a perfect balance, but obviously moving to a whole different country actually took me only 3 to 5 days to decide to move to India and spend the rest of my career there.
Oh my God, you decided, wait, you had 5 days to kind of make that decision?
I made the decision
5 days before you traveled.
Yes.
That's crazy. Yeah. That is insane. So it was a huge step, but once you have that passion, if you have that goal, no matter what time it is, that that's something you have to do. So I think that was similar for you, right? When you have this drive for climate action, for youth engagement, and you wanted to do that directly with the families, with the people, and this was your opportunity. And I think it was hard, but it was an easy decision in a way as well, because it was directly aligned with your goals.
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned earlier, when you let your heart lead, you kind of don't decide twice. You kind of just take it. Yeah. Good thing it's for the profession, not for my love life. Otherwise, that would have been a different story. But yeah, definitely moving to India I actually was not expecting really the CEO role. I was just there, I really wanted to be with communities. And then the family that I worked with, the Dholakia family, was like, do you want to be our CEO? At that point, I was like, are you joking? Like, I mean, they've never appointed a CEO before. And at that time, I was still 23. But then I realized that if I don't take this, then, there wouldn't be a best practice out there of a young person leading this like huge foundation, being in a leadership role. Because I feel like if you look at my Instagram handle or like the description diary of learning experiences, you don't really see about me speaking in different panels or what I do in a day of my life at work. What you really see is my journey, making mistakes, what are the biggest learning experience I've made.
Yeah.
And for me, this is a great opportunity for me to see what the world is like out there in the lens of being an executive in a foundation, and also making the mistakes that I need to make for others to learn from my mistakes.
You are paving the way quite literally for everyone else. So it's incredible to see. It's so, so cool. And you were talking about how one of your goals with your Instagram page is learning experiences, and that you want to showcase what you've been learning, what are the challenges that you've overcome that's so important. And I want to dive a little bit into that in terms of in the climate space. There's lots of things that you probably learned about how the environment works, how the UN works, how these different conferences work. And right now there's COP28 going on. And what do you think of the significance of COP in general? Like, how effective do you really think it is in this drive towards climate action?
When we talk about climate,
Yeah.
I feel like we all have to be realistic about it. I mean, in my philosophy class, it is the what is and what ought to be. Finding the middle of that is where we should drive change.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a lot of expectations in terms of, COP28. And although, there's so much different perspectives about it. But for me, in my personal experience about COPs, this is actually my third COP. I feel like we should go beyond COPs, and we should talk about how in our daily lives we are breaking the barriers to drive climate action. Because essentially COP is a gathering. It's like, getting married, but it just starts there. But the question is, what's next?
Yeah.
And there's many more things that happens right after it. Although the marriage, I don't know.
Interesting analogy, yeah.
Yeah. But that's how I think about it. It's a space for people to gather, to talk about solutions. But action doesn't really happen at COP. It's where decisions are being made. It's where negotiations happen. But the bulk of the action, the bulk of where hope is beyond COP, actually. Yeah.
It's what happens after that. I think COP it's a beautiful conference that has enabled this dialogue to occur, these conversations to occur between relevant parties.
Yeah.
But the actual solution comes from the action that happens afterwards. So it's kind of a combination of both. I think the analogy was quite interesting. Like, when the marriage happens, the wedding ceremony happens, it's beautiful, like you celebrate, but the real marriage is what happens afterwards, like, living your life with the other person. So that's definitely interesting.
And I do want to add something though, because people think of COP as this prestigious conference that they want to go to.
Exactly.
I mean, I fell in that trap when at COP26, where, I wanted to be there because I wanted to experience it.
Yeah.
But without having the intention of why you are there at COP, you would feel empty by the end of COP.
True.
Because it's this like whole 2 weeks of negotiations, meeting people, going to panels, going to sessions. But if you don't really set a target or an intention of why you're going there, if you don't work towards setting that goal, like for example, who are the people you want to meet? What is the agenda that you want to make? What's your personal fundraising goal? Like what are your certain things, rather than just saying, oh, I went to COP or I spoke at this panels and then posted it on LinkedIn. I mean, that is great, but I feel like we should go beyond representation and actually action. And I feel like that's what a lot of young people need to do, is taking the initiative to take that microphone or take that podium rather than just saying, okay, I need the podium, I need the microphone.
I love that. I think that's a very, very good point, because now, especially young people, because we live in an age of social media and phones, we're very much attached to how we are perceived on the outside and what are we posting on our stories and things like that. So, you know, even with these conferences, we just want to go take some pictures and post it online. But what did you actually gain out of it? So that's a very good point, because it reminded me of my experiences with COP. And this year's I went, it was really good. But last year I had a particular goal in mind on what I had to do. So I learned a lot more last year than I did this year, even though this year is incredible. Like, what's happening is so cool. So that was a very, very good point to make, especially for a young person wanting to get into this space. And so this is all about like COP and and conferences and the action. And going back to what inspired you to start all of this, right? You, I remember watching this video of you talking about how you grew up in the Philippines. You've witnessed like climate change firsthand, coming from a farmer's family. I remember you watching that of you. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? What kind of experiences did you feel firsthand in Philippines where you're like, we need to take action?
So growing up, I thought that climate change, like the yearly typhoons and floods where thousands would die, was a normal thing. Sadly, then I moved to the US and I attended the session hosted by Climate Reality, founded by former Vice President Al Gore. They were talking about these solutions and the fact that climate change the climate crisis is going to be felt by X amount of countries in a couple of years. In my head, I was like, that's what we're experiencing now.
Yeah.
And obviously growing up in a family of farmers and politicians, I saw where the injustice was. So there's like two sides of two different experiences that makes me who I am. One is the side of climate change and the side of where social change should happen. And this too is kind of like the blend of where I am right now, in a sense that I don't only advocate for climate change, but also the things that intersect with climate change.
Interesting.
And one thing I'd like to point out is that growing up in that family made me realize that the reason why we have so much social issues is not because we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough food, we don't have enough infrastructure, but actually we don't give people enough opportunities to empower themselves. And working in philanthropy, I really want to push forward the agenda of, if you want to empower people, we have to let them choose. We have to empower them, like teach them how to decide, rather than, you know, us telling them, oh, you need a school, you need a hospital. Yeah.
It's like we were talking about this earlier as well, that, you know, the phrase where you shouldn't just give someone a fish, you should teach them how to fish. And so that will give them a whole livelihood. Yeah. And that's a very good point in terms of how empowering youth, empowering individuals is not through just giving them, spoon feeding them what they need. It's giving them the chance to learn and then create whatever they need for themselves.
Definitely.
So I think that your experiences kind of taught you that, and you saw like this stark difference in the Philippines and in the US, and you were like, you know, there's some level of unjust, like an unjust system there. So that was very insightful probably for you when you went to the US. Was that the first time you went to the US or?
No. So back in 2013 was the first time I went to the US. Stayed there for 3 years. And then moved back to the Philippines to finish my high school and senior high school. Then moved back for my college years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's like the sandwich space there.
Yeah, there's a little, So we were talking about how your experiences moving to the US, and there were things that you learned that you had to unlearn because of the distinct cultures. So moving on from the climate space, I want to talk a little about culture, right? So we can go chronologically. So we can talk about your experiences moving from the Philippines then to the US. So what are the stark differences that you saw when you went to the US first?
So then when I went to the US, obviously the culture is much more different. It's the typical thing that you see in Western movies.
Yeah.
But moving back to the Philippines, especially having experienced the life in New York, Washington, D.C., where people are so driven, I was like, I'm sorry, this is not for me. I have to go back. But that doesn't mean I'm not going back to serve my country. It's about, when you're in the age of 18 to 25, I feel like it's all about investing in yourself, trying as much things, determining what type of activities gives you life. Because once you do those things, you become more passionate. Creative ideas come to you, and in that case, believe it or not, the right type of people will come to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it all comes within you, and then
So when you were saying that when you went to New York, you were surrounded by like these driven individuals. How different is that from the Philippines? Do you find it different because Philippines is a more family-oriented culture? What was the difference that you found particularly?
So I would say that New York was out of my comfort zone, and I love taking risks. I love exploring the unknown, and being in the Philippines felt like, okay, this is where I grew up. I know these people. I know the food. I literally know all the stores. But being in New York, you meet a different person every time. And, you just hear about their stories, and you're just like, wow, this is like the melting pot of the world, and this is where I want to be.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And there's so many cool things about New York, right? Like you were saying, driven people, passion, goals. What is something that was hard for you to adjust to, though? Like, what is something that you didn't like, or
in New York City?
Yeah, compared to Philippines.
I feel like people not being as warm as they are, because New York... and I also understand that a lot of people there are not specifically from there, so they're away from their families, so they're kind of like in the survival mode, figuratively. So, they can be transactional, and that was something that really hurt me, especially in the dating scene, where people
there's so much talk about here.
Yeah, where when you go on a date with someone, it's not like they have the right intention, same as you do. So maybe they're just there for like, to chill
A fling.
Yeah, a fling. And there's this thing called situationships in New York City, which is like, and there's so many terms now that have came because of the dating scene. For me, that was very hard to adjust, because coming in my culture and also seeing my family grow, having a partner in life is very essential.
Yeah.
And I would not say that New York City is the best place to find someone, because I say this a lot. New York City is a phase in everyone's life, and they always go out of New York City one way or another.
It's just like it's a temporary period of your time. You don't see it as like a permanent place to be.
Yes.
I think you mentioned this to me even the first time that we met face to face. You were saying like it's kind of like a transit. Like you come to New York City, you stay there,
experience New York, and
then you would eventually leave. So it's interesting to see how the dating scene is so different there, because it's definitely different from my culture as well, which I think Philippines would be similar in terms of when you date someone, you date them with the intention of
marrying
long-term relationship, with marriage. And so that's very different there. And for them, our culture is different. As for them, they think that, we're committing too fast or too hard.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, and we were talking about how that was one extreme that you saw. You saw the opposite extreme when you went to India, right? So what did you think of the scene in India? Okay,
so just going back to lay out the timeline there, I went to the Philippines. I grew up in the Philippines, where marriage, dating is like such a huge thing taken seriously. I moved to the US during college, where dating is like very transactional. And then moving back to India. So I moved to a tier 2 city, Surat city in Gujarat. And it's so traditional, where people have arranged marriages. So this whole thing of arranged marriage was so insane to me. In that I think that was last month, when one of my colleagues was like, oh, I'm going to go back to my village this weekend to find a wife. I thought he was joking. when he came back the next week, I feel like it's on the Wednesday, he was like, oh, I'm engaged. I was like, how? How did you do that? Like, do you even know this person? And then he was like, no, so my family just let me choose. I was like, and you're going to marry this person without even knowing them? Yeah, we're going to know each other for the rest 1 or 2 months. And it was like, but it's like you're engaged already. Like, you already made the decision. So there, I mean, and to me, it was kind of interesting because, you know, coming from New York where no one wants to commit to anything, to going to India where people at the age of 23 to 24 have to get married.
Yeah.
And seeing them build this beautiful family is just, I don't know, seeing the two extremes of different worlds.
Yeah. And for you, what would be like the balance? What would be a balance where I guess first of all, your intention is the first thing. You date someone with the intention to get married. And then the second thing would probably be to get to know the person for a period of time before.
Maybe like 2-3 years.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think this is definitely something in Pakistan that still exists. Arranged marriages are still common in Pakistan. And it's not always this way where you just like know the person for like 2 days and then you get engaged. Usually in Pakistan, you talk to the person for like a couple of months and before you're like, okay, I do really like this person. But your parents being involved in the marriage, it's still quite common in Pakistan, which I don't know if that's how it is in Philippines.
No,
do arranged marriages happen?
No, but we have this like courting type of system where the guy serenades the girl, goes to ask permission from the girl's parents. But also one thing, because I do have a couple women colleagues, in my first 1 to 2 months in India, she was like, oh, I have resumes. I was like, what type of resume job? Because she also works in HR. He was like, marriage resumes. I was like, guys send the resumes to you for marriage? It's like, yeah, and I have to choose. Okay, let's look at that. So then you guys were looking,
oh my God, yeah. We call them like bio datas.
Yeah,
like,
bio datas, yeah.
Yeah, it's very common for these things. Like they circulate across. Like this is an actual business. Like matchmaking is a business now where like they charge you to and then they get like these profiles of different individuals and then the matchmaker sees, oh, this person aligns with this person's interests. So then they give each other's contacts and then they talk. So it's like a different form of Tinder, I guess.
But that's interesting though, because people match you instead of you going just about face value and what they put on their profile. I feel like the biodatas are more intentional at the end of the day. They have a lot more like what they want, what they do, where they're from. I mean, if I was looking at the biodata, I mean, which reflects, with my background in New York City, I just look at the face. Yeah. Like, this is cuter. And she's like, no, but then I don't like this part of him. I was like, okay, maybe that's just me being a New Yorker in India.
But it's very true. Like a lot of people, you can consider it in two ways. One is that, okay, it is definitely very intentional. And one is that, okay, it can be a little, it's kind of like we use this word called Amazonification of a person where you're kind of like creating a product profile of a person and sharing it. So it's like, it can be good, but it can also be bad because you're like mentioning specific requirements that you want from the other person. And so it is helpful in cultures where dating by yourself is not very common. So in our culture, religion definitely plays a role in this as well, where, you go after guys yourself or you go from one boy to the other. It's not very common. So then the parents jump in, but it's still like now families in Pakistan, I cannot say everything about India. So I'm saying my perspective in Pakistan. Now families in Pakistan, they're kind of blending. So it's like they do get involved. Families definitely get involved. Even if the girl or the guy finds the partner by her or himself, the family would of course still get involved. So it's like now it's blending, it's changing, but arranged marriages still very much occur. You were talking about Philippines and how there's this thing of courting. Can you expand on that?
So apparently if a guy likes a girl, he serenades her. I mean, obviously this doesn't happen nowadays because Philippines is now more Western. I mean, I see when I went back home, I see people using Bumble, Tinder, Hinge.
So it's common there now.
Yeah, and even the Facebook. So Filipinos use Facebook so much, and I feel like the Philippines is the country with the largest users of Facebook. They even have like the dating
groups.
No, dating section where it's like a Tinder where you swipe right and left in Facebook. I was like,
you have that on Facebook?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's like dating option apparently. But back in the day, and I would prefer it this way, it's like when a man likes a woman, you would like woo her, like court her, sing to her, go to her parents, ask for her hand, and you know, the olden way. But then it's kind of hard to think that exists.
That exists today.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that maybe you've seen this in India, that usually the guy goes to the girl's house when to ask for the girl's hand in marriage. That still happens, but of course after they've talked for a while, like they've agreed that okay, they want to get married, so then like there's this period where the guy would have to go to the girl's house and then talk with the family. That still happens, but definitely not the whole, not the same as how it was in the past, for sure.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
cute. It's still cute. Yeah, it's definitely cute. So, you've seen like this whole dating scene as well, the arranged marriages scene. It's quite distinct. What are other cultural differences that you saw in India when you moved into India?
I'd say that in India, people get involved a lot in your life, which is so much different from New York City because no one cares if you wear your pajamas to get your morning coffee. Like literally no one cares because at the end of the day, they have their own life and it's why would they care about your life when they have a lot on their plate already?
Yeah.
But in India, and I think it's also part of like the close-knitness of the community, especially in Surat where I would say 8 out of 10 people don't speak English. So it's hard for me to communicate also. I mean, in a sense, one thing that really shocked me is that people comment so much. Like when I get like my third Starbucks coffee of the week, they're like, "Oh, she's getting Starbucks again." I was like, "What's wrong with me getting Starbucks?"
Even those little things. So how do they say? Do they say it to you in front of you, or like how?
No, they don't say it in front of me, obviously.
But you
I get so much, comments about many things, and then for me, it's like maybe it's something unusual to them. To me, it's a norm, and for me, there was a time where I was like, okay, maybe I should get less Starbucks so they don't talk about it, or because I just want to have a peaceful life. Yeah. I'm a very peaceful person. I really don't like drama. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll adjust a bit. But then I realized the more that I don't do the things that make me who I am, I lose myself.
Yeah.
So now I'm unapologetic of the things that I do.
I love that. As you should be, honestly. And I think that because in our culture, it's very collectivistic. It's very family oriented. People are very community based. So they always feel like everyone's business is their business. Like it's just a thing in the culture. And in one way, it's good where they always care for other people, even people outside of their family. They're very caring, but sometimes it can lead to something a little too extreme where they start commenting on everything. And
oh yes, yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, you don't speak to them, you never talk to them because you don't speak the same language, but I feel like it's a norm. And that's also one thing I learned from India is that I mentioned this earlier, that I have to listen and learn from them rather than me teaching them something. And I feel like that's part of moving to a different country. Is when you have to listen, you have to observe rather than you saying, complaining, oh, why this, and this. Because at the end of the day, believe it or not, if you don't like it, you can leave it, you know? And for me, being there was like a choice. I was telling my colleague today, one thing that I realized, you know, I would be lying if I never thought about leaving, like once a week, you know, going back to the US, just dropping everything. But then every time I leave, or at least, you know, tell people, oh, you know, I'm thinking of leaving because, you know, this is really not me. I don't feel myself in many ways. They tell me, you know, we're actually here for you. And if you are leaving, we're also leaving.
Oh.
So then I realized my decision of being there for myself is more so now a decision of being a leader that people look up to. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. And I know like it must be incredibly difficult to move to a different country, especially a country that's the complete opposite of where you grew up, where you were raised, and where you you know, started your career and all of these things. So it's incredibly difficult and different, but pulling through that, overcoming that, and then finding people who you are truly impacting and leading. It's so beautiful to see. Like we were talking about how you can see firsthand the progression of a person in your team, and that really empowers you, and you're like, oh, I am doing something here, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Especially, and it's also one thing I'd like to say about if you want to put young people at the forefront of leadership, you have to let them make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because it's like you know, those executives who are now 60, at that age, when maybe they're like 20 through 24, they probably made a lot of mistakes for them to be there. It's just about the proper guidance, motivating them that, you know, you can do this. You're born to do this. And that's one thing I learned to do with the team is, you know, I don't put this facade that I'm okay, I'm a girl boss, I am girl bossing my way through life. No, it's like, you know, being here is not easy. Like I tell them, you know, I really miss my family right now, and sometimes I just want a cup of coffee, like Starbucks, because for me Starbucks now feels home, believe it or not.
Yeah.
One of the only things that I have that reminds me of home.
Yeah. It's comfort for you.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, maybe they might not be in the extreme situation as I am, but I want them to know that, oh, she was able to overcome this experience, and so I will also as well.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's so amazing. And going back to what you were talking about, comfort, and that you're trying to find those little things that, you know, reminds you of home, like Starbucks. And I wanted to know a little bit about comparing India to the Philippines, because we were talking about how when you move from Philippines to the US, you had to unlearn things. Then when you moved to India, you had to learn things again. So that means that there were some similarities between India and the Philippines. And one thing that I was thinking about was you were talking about how people think that people comment a lot on what you're doing. And this is because it's a very community-based society. I would assume that that's also how it is in the Philippines, right? Yeah. So how is the environment there in terms of people commenting on others? Is that commonplace there, or how is that like there?
It is pretty common in the Philippines. When, you know, people give their opinion on what you should do in life. It's also a thing, you know, like how in India, they're like, oh, you should be a doctor, you should be an engineer, you should be a lawyer. In the Philippines, you should be a nurse.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why you see a lot of Filipino nurses.
Yes.
And I actually went to nursing school for one semester. Then I changed. I was like, nah, this is not for me. Yeah. Definitely in the Philippines, I would say that a lot of people were commenting. But now that I think about it, the reason why it was so uncomfortable for me in India, because I don't know these people.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I at least acknowledge the comments that my parents make. But then, you know, when you're in a different culture, especially the people that you don't even talk to or don't even know their name makes a comment, it's like, oh gosh, like that's unsolicited things.
Yeah.
But like, again, maybe it's their norm, and maybe the things that I do is very different from what they're used to. And that's something that I do have to understand and not take it personally. So don't take everything personally.
Yeah, that's actually hard to do, because when you go to a different country and you're used to a different environment, so anything that wrong or anything that happens that doesn't go align with your values and your environment, you take it personally. Like it's normal, definitely. Right? It's just human nature.
Yeah, and that also comes from a place where you're like, oh, I want to respect their culture. I just want to make sure I'm not stepping on something.
Yeah.
But separating that from the comments of others, because essentially feedback reflects a lot.
Yeah.
Separating, constructive feedback with unsolicited feedback is so hard for me to do, because there's many things that I don't even know about the culture.
Yeah.
It's like I'm learning along my way.
Yeah.
And I feel like being conscious about what people are saying comes from also a place of like, I just want to be respectful of their culture, like the way I dress, the way I lead, the way I make rules in the foundation should be something that's aligned with their culture also.
Yeah. It's hard to find that balance, right? Like where you're respecting them, but you're also making sure that they don't disrespect you along the way. So that's definitely a difficult balance to navigate through. I was also thinking about how it's like being, the CEO in India, but being a female CEO, so being a woman in this space. I think you're one of the only females.
I'm the only female in the executive team.
Yes, the only female in the executive team.
23.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So how is that like being a woman in this space where I don't know, is the environment misogynistic? Is the environment respectful? How has that experience been like?
First of all, I would say that I know my value. So if they would not have treated me like a family, and if they wouldn't have given me a space to lead and learn and given me the agency to establish the type of structure that I want to have in the foundation, I would have left already.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting because like I told you, things like these don't even hit me, because I didn't even realize that I was the only female in the executive team. In that I felt like I was part of them. They made me feel like I was part of them. They would include and invite me in their family activities, to experience the culture. The Navratri festival, I did the Garba.
Very cool.
Yeah, so these type of experiences was to me, made me feel like, okay, made me feel warm, made me feel like I was back in the Philippines. Yeah. It's like, like I mentioned earlier, that when I was in the Philippines, people were very warm. So I was also warm. When I was in New York, the only people that were warm was mostly my family. As outside from that, people were very transactional, which also kind of made me transactional. Going back to India, it's like, okay, do I become warm or transactional? But coming from New York, I had to relearn, being warm and, enjoying time with family. And right now, not having family in Gujarat, in Surat, my only family is literally my team and the Dholakia family. That's really my new family right now.
Yeah. And I think that's really beautiful how they've sort of welcomed you, and they wanted you to learn the culture and the tradition. And this is one thing that I know Pakistanis are also extremely good at, when they're known for their hospitality. So when foreigners come in, when any kind of guest comes in, they want to make sure that you feel welcomed. And I'm happy to hear that you got to experience it as well. Like you felt welcomed in that sense, and you got to experience the festival. How was the festival like? I want to know a little bit about that.
I love the dancing. For me, it was crazy to think that this type of worship for them. But yeah, the Navratri.
I also don't know as much about it. So I would love to listen a little bit about what it was.
So I'm not familiar about the Hindu religion, but they dance like in circles, and they do it till like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Like they're so dedicated to it. And I feel like it's a 7 to 10 day long event where they do it every night. And to me, it's just like so amazing to see that this is how they establish culture, establish relationships among people, and also like worship and you know, establish really their prayers for the gods. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's beautiful. And I think it's really beautiful to see the different forms of worship in different countries. This is why I love studying about different people's religions, because I think there's so much wisdom in all types of religions. And so even the form of dance, how that can be that can be such a beautiful form of worship in one religion. It's cool. It's really cool and interesting to see. So that's nice that you got to experience that. So this was all a little bit about how you got welcomed into the foundation, which is just incredible that, you know, you felt welcomed. How was it like being a woman? So, of course, you were mentioning that you were one of the only women in the executive team, and you already mentioned that they respected you, that they welcomed you, which is fantastic. But in the culture in general, did you feel this divide between men and women? What did you feel?
Yeah, definitely. And for me, that was something hard to see, because someone advocating for more women, more young people in this space, and moving to India where it's like women are more reserved, in which they're in the house. Although it might not be the case for whole India, but Surat is like a tier 2 city. I'd like to mention this again. And it's very, I would say, concentrated on like the culture, and it's like people have the same thing. So most women are just in the home, and, you know, our parent company is in the diamond industry. So there's most likely going to be a lot of men, because women think that to polish diamonds is not safe for them. But, you know, it's like the stigma that comes with it. And also there's a stigma that comes with women working. So I would say that one of the things that was really hard for me is hiring a lot of women that I can see to leave the foundation forward. Because believe it or not, I mean, who knows, I may or may not stay in India for like 10 years. So it's really good to think about these things early on and establish the culture, establish, you know, the identity of the foundation, aside from the family, with people who are actually going to drive action.
Exactly.
So like I was saying, you know, women need to get married by the age of between 23 to 25. For me, that's insane, because I'm like 24, and sometimes they say, "Oh, when are you gonna get married?"
Oh yeah, you probably
they're like, "Invite me to your wedding." But I do say this joke, although I'm, you know, going to the other direction. I say to them, my only response is, I'm only going to get married when the 2030 goals are finished. So I get married when I'm 2030. So yeah.
You make it clear to them. Yeah.
But actually going back, when I hire women, especially young women, I kind of ask them like, you know, are you married? Do you have kids? What are your plans for the future? Like this during like an interview.
Yeah.
Because I want to see, you know, why they applied for a job in the foundation. And interestingly, most women say we're here to help society.
Yay.
Yes. But the next question is, how long can you keep them there? Because these women, essentially, most of them have to get married, they stay home, and so it's hard to retain them. And so I do this pep talks with my girls and say, oh gosh, did you know that the world is so huge out there? And kind of like put in their heads, like, you know, you at least have a partner that supports the work that you do, because I see so much potential in them. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I started in the space through passion, and I see so much passion from them. And so I tell them, you know, you shouldn't limit yourself. And I know it's kind of hard to go beyond what society tells you to do. Exactly, that's what I did. But, you know, tell them the other side of what the world is like. And, you know, if you create your story, maybe your kids would also be the next Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, Mahatma Gandhi came from Gujarat. So, Yeah.
True. And how do they respond when you say these things? Like when you try to encourage them, how do they respond?
Interestingly, they respond positively because they are inspired by my life story, by the work that I have done. And I have to be very honest that my mom doesn't support me being in India.
Oh, really?
So we like fight almost every day. And it just breaks my heart because she's the reason why I'm here. Because she told me, live your life, not for me or for you, live it for others. And so being here, I mean, it's the motherly thing where you don't want your child to be far away from you.
Yeah.
But I told her, you know, this is what I want to do in my life, at least for the next 2-3 years, and see if I'm going to stay here for a long time. So yeah, I tell them that, you know, this is my story, and you know, if I can do this, you can do it too. And so they get inspired. They're like, okay, teach us how we can do things. And that's why I bring them to conferences. I teach them, you know, the skills that I learned, like, for example, pitching, creating projects, creating pitch decks.
Yeah.
Because I feel like aside from having a great idea, it's all about execution of that idea is what really matters.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's so cool to see how you're truly impacting them by, you know, taking to these conferences, making them learn these important skills. I think I've seen this a lot growing up, where I just feel like there are so many opportunities that were given to me purely because of the family that I was born into, because they, you know, they wanted me to develop, they wanted me to grow. I love my family, but sometimes I'm just like, why did I get these opportunities, but other Pakistani girls who are even better than me, like, why don't they get those opportunities? So it's very, very hard for me to witness that. And so for you to be in a place where you can impact those girls, like face to face, that's so cool. Like, honestly, the kind of impact that you can create on another woman like that, I can't even imagine how, like, changing those women's mindsets one step at a time, it can go such a long way, such a long way. Everyone says that there are statistics and studies done on whether when you educate a man, you educate a man, but when you educate a woman, you educate an entire village. So it goes a long way. So I really, it's so cool to see how you've been impacting those girls, and I love that. Honestly, I love that. And when you were mentioning about your mother, and you were saying that, you know, it's hard, obviously, for a mother to see you go far away. But why do you think she was reluctant to send you to India? Was she scared because it's a new space, new environment? What do you think?
I would say she's scared mainly because of the stories she hears from India. And to be honest, she didn't get to know the Dholakia family. Also, I also didn't get to know them. I was like, okay, this is what I'm born to do. Be with local communities, and, you know, all the stories here of India, of sanitation, of like being safe, and, you know, there are many things that comes into her head, you know, as a mother. I want my girl or child to be safe. Yeah. And obviously, sometimes she thinks like, you know, why are you there in the village when, you know, you come from New York City? Interestingly, when I FaceTime her in my first 3 months in India, when I'm in New York, I wear makeup, heels, like, you know, dress up.
You dress up, yeah.
Yeah. When I'm in the village and she FaceTime me, she's like, you're sick. I'm like, no, I'm not sick. I'm just not wearing makeup, Mama. This is my face.
This is the true me.
Yeah, this is me. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's obviously, was that also an adjustment for you? Like, in terms of clothing style, how you had to appear?
Yeah, obviously. Definitely. There's this one person who told me, I thought you liked the hot weather because Gujarat is also pretty hot. And I said, well, yeah, I like the hot weather, but with the free clothing, not this clothing. But yeah, having that adjustment of like having to wear certain type of wear for, you know, for people to be comfortable around you.
So that's interesting. You said comfortable. So do you think people would feel uncomfortable when you wore different types of clothing? Yes. How were the people's comments like? So
one time I wore this like, not off shoulder, but it didn't have like a cover thing, but it was not like spaghetti. So someone told me you should wear a shawl. I was like, okay. So I went back to my room,
And you were,
and I was like, okay, that was my signal to not wear it anymore. And for me, it's like, okay, this is the culture. I have to respect it. And like I said, it's not just about me this time. It's about them learning what they're comfortable with, but also determining what is constructive criticism compared to unsolicited criticism.
Yeah, you just have to learn to find that balance, I guess. And no matter which country you move to, whether it's India, whether it's London, or wherever you're in. So that's definitely true. You just have to navigate through that. It's definitely hard, but that's the key advice you could probably give to someone wanting to move abroad to a completely different country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to move somewhere for like 1-2 years, where would it be?
Ooh, I remember telling you know that I always wanted to live in the US for a while, and you were like, why? but it's just like that exact reason that you talk about, how you're in this environment of people who have so much like passion, and they have a mission, they have this drive. And I lived in San Francisco for 2 months. It's different from New York because I think SF is more chill. People are more like, they have like chill vibes. Of course, it's a tech space, but it's just, I feel like SF people are just like, they take life slowly. I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, that
was my
chill.
vibe.
That's San Francisco in general.
But that was not what I expected, because when I went in, I was like, oh, tech space, like people are like fast. And of course, it depends on who you meet. Like when you meet those tech people, they want to do this and that and this and that. So you meet a lot of tech geniuses there, that's for sure. But it's just generally a chill place. But I had the best time of my life because I met so many cool people there. And I think that's what I sometimes crave for, like just being in an environment full of people where each and every person has some kind of goal that they want to achieve. And, and when you come together, you help each other in one way or the other. So yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why I always wanted to live in the US for a period of time. But UAE is my home. Like, it'll always be my home. So I would always want to come back eventually. But yeah, US, definitely I want to live there for a period. Would you want to live somewhere else now?
No, I'm actually going to say you should. I would say 2-3 years because you're going to meet interesting people there.
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, you're not going to expect this. I will live in New York for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I will.
Really?
Yes.
Because you were saying because it's a temporary place, I assumed that it's the same for you, that you love it that much? Huh?
Yes. It's interesting. It's like that first love. People's first love are people. Mine was New York City in a sense that my first few weeks in New York City, I was like, oh my gosh, these creative ideas just comes to me. Like, it's just the vibe that makes me so alive.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, in New York, I can work 16 hours a day. Yeah.
Wow.
16 hours a day. And then I work out 3 times a day. People are going to hate me for saying this. In the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. I run at 5th Avenue at like 11 o'clock. People are saying it's not safe. I'm like, I don't care. This is New York City. This is my city. But yeah, I just love, and I see myself, I'm not sure if I will settle down with someone or have a partner. That's not one of my priorities right now, but I do know that I do want to be in that city, be with the change that comes with that city, and experience every day the ideas and the vibe, the motivation that city brings me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's definitely the feeling that anyone who goes to New York gets. Like, they just, like, when I went to New York, I felt like I could do anything. I feel like everything.
Like you can jump out of
literally. Like, I could do anything. Like, everything's at the touch of my fingertips. So
yeah,
that's pretty cool to see how you have that. I think in terms of dating and partnerships, maybe that's a little tricky, as you were talking about. But I guess you find the balance somehow. Hopefully you will definitely will. So
yeah. And sometimes I tell my parents, like, I don't feel like I'm going to get married. I don't feel like I'm going to find someone. And they're like, just focus on yourself. And I feel like every parent tells this to their daughter. Just focus on yourself and men will flock to you.
It's true. I agree, honestly. Like when a woman develops herself, finds her passion, finds her goal, and is like driven, men will come. Like they will come. There will always be men. Like I just like this whole idea of getting married by a specific age and period. I understand biologically that yes, by up to a certain point you may not be able to reproduce. Biologically it makes sense, but just this pressure of getting married by like in your early 20s, I think that's extremely early, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And even now companies offer women to freeze their eggs for free.
Yeah.
I know that can be a controversial topic, but I feel like it just makes... It shows the support towards women.
Yeah. I mean, even whether you would do it or not, that's something else. But just having that option for women to do that showcases that, you know, they can prioritize their careers, which they should as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that it's not about the lack of resources, but the lack of opportunities. If you give people enough opportunities for them to choose which path they want to take, I feel like the world will be in such a different and better place.
Yeah. Well, Keziah, thank you so much for today. I loved 1 hour flew by. There's so many other things that we still didn't talk about, but I'm sure we'll meet in New York or we'll meet some other time and maybe we could do a part 2 of this episode.
Don't worry. I feel like in New York you'll have like the couch set up by then, the Oprah Winfrey with your book.
Oh my God. You're thinking even bigger than I have thought of.
No, think big. See, that's the thing that New York City tells you.
True.
They think big. Just do it. Just do it. Every day is a different day. Every day is a different opportunity. That's one thing I missed in India. In India, I didn't feel that way.
But here in Dubai?
Similar. Yeah, it's like the balance of both. But yeah, I'm really grateful to be here. Like I was telling my colleague that I feel like myself again. I feel like, you know, it's a great way to end the year, to feel like myself again. Yeah. If not, I would have lost myself and I would not have loved the things that I do anymore. So
yeah. Well, I'm so glad you got to end your year this way with the Karak with Mehreen. So I have a little gift for you.
Thank you.
For your time and for being here.
Feel good tea.
Yes. I'm excited for you to open it.
Can I open it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm practicing my influencer era.
Everyone, you're gonna blow up for sure on social media because like we were talking about how you wanna start, you know, posting about your learning experiences. It's like I can't wait for you to start posting because I'm so excited to see. You already did, but like as you start posting more, like it's just so much to learn from. But yeah.
Oh, this is so fancy. Thank you so much. I'll tag you in it when I make the tea.
Yes, please
with
do.
our office kitchen
with your
people who don't even speak English, so I'm just gonna communicate with them through.
They're gonna love the tea. Tea has no language barriers.
I know. Yeah, but thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and best of luck with everything. I know you're gonna do great things.
Thank you.
Always here for you.
Thank you so much.